I want to thank everybody for coming out today, and I want to thank the committee who's been working on this for the past 5 or 6 months now. I think we're going into our 6th month, and it's been quite a process. And for those of you that haven't been part of the process up to this point, we have been working to develop a strategic plan for the city of Alva. Got a strong group of citizens that have come together, and we've spent the last several weeks really getting to know our community in a way that many of us probably haven't had an opportunity to. A lot of the leaders have had a chance to know the different facets of all the different things going on in our community, but it's been nice to have a group of citizens come together where we can all become on the same page. What we're here today for is to learn more about what's going on and what's going to go on in and around our community. Tom Ward is the chairman and CEO of Sandridge Energy. Been a big part of our community for the past few years, and even before that, before the field office has come in. So we're grateful to have Sandridge in the community. I do want to say that there's hardly any one of us in this room that hasn't been impacted by the energy industry, whether we have family working in it, whether we have customers in the business, or whether we're taking care of them in other facets, or whether we're working in them ourselves. And it is a huge part of what our community is experiencing right now and is going to experience moving forward. Mr. Ward, we welcome you to our group and look forward to what you have to say.
Thank you. I love to come to Alva because, as most of you know, I grew up in Sealing, but my wife grew up in Winoka. We got married in 1978, and I've been coming to Alva for many, many years. I own a lot of land around this area. I started buying land in the 1980s, I guess 1988, and in woods alfalfa, and then on up into Kansas. But this area is not only the hub of the Mississippian, but also the hub of my life. So I guess, and I can't say it any better than there's no better outcome in life than to have your business relationships tie together with your personal relationships. So to have our company start working out here in the middle of nowhere around Pecos County, Texas in 2006, and to end up back here in and around where I grew up is very, very fulfilling to me. And so I'm appreciative of all that Alva has done. I'm appreciative of the people here, and we love working in the Mississippian. So maybe just to take, I'll take a step back with Sandridge in just a bit, but even let's think about the Mississippian play. So why we're here and why Sandridge is in this area. At my days at Chesapeake, we drilled a lot of wells, really more into the Chester Formation, which is just to the south. I don't have a geological map up here, but if you think of this, the Chester erodes, or it's gone as it gets up to this area at Alva. But to the south, that formation sits above the Mississippian. And we drilled over 1,000 locations in through Woods and Woodward and Major and down into Dewey counties in that same Chester Formation. And so intuitively, we'd already drilled a tremendous amount of wells in the same type of formation, but it was absent here. And so as you go north, and the Mississippian starts to be that formation that sits below the Pennsylvania Inconformity, which is just the formation that has the most porosity and permeability. The reason we didn't develop that vertically was oil prices were low. The Mississippian has more oil in it than even though it has a large amount of natural gas. But really, the main reason of hindrance in the Mississippian was we produce a large amount of salt water. And so until oil prices, or natural gas prices, but in this case oil prices, get to a point that you can put in systems to deal with saltwater disposal, you really can't develop the Mississippian like we can develop it today. And so that was the hindrance of the oil boom moving on up from basically just north of Winoka up through today, where we see all the way up into Finney County, Kansas, was the ability to have high enough prices to drill wells that you could handle water. And that's what our company specializes in. But if you think back historically, We started buying Mississippian acreage at Chesapeake in the early 2000s. There was a well drilled just out here north of town by a company called Avalon that started. It was a vertical well that kind of kicked off that there was oil in this Mississippian area north of Alva. And then Chesapeake started drilling horizontally, I believe, in 2007 after I'd left. And that idea and the success of drilling horizontally then propelled us at Sandridge to take a look and say, can this be anywhere outside of Woods County? Because the Mississippian at that time had focused just in and around the Alva area. And we were the first company to say, I think that can be expanded to a larger area as long as you're willing to have saltwater disposal systems. So just as importantly as finding oil, the saltwater disposal system is just as important in order to have a commercial well. So Sandridge has invested, by the end of this year, by the end of 2013, we will have invested $650 million in drilling saltwater disposal wells and systems across Oklahoma and Kansas. So that's the type of investment that we're making, not only in drilling wells, but also having people out and laying pipelines for saltwater disposal, laying electrical lines. I don't know if it's in this slide deck or not, but we have over 500 miles of distribution lines. And that now allows us to drill inside of this system. But historically at Sandridge, whenever I left Chesapeake in 2006, I wanted an idea around natural gas. I thought that the natural gas prices would be high. I didn't think I would see below $6 natural gas in my career. And that was in 2006. Well, obviously that was wrong. Natural gas prices today are only $3.50 and got down below $3 in MCF. And the investment that I made in 2006 in what became Sandridge was all around a natural gas idea in West Texas. And so whenever I left Chesapeake, the interest in buying natural gas was very, very high. So I had to look to a different type of investment. Much like dealing with saltwater here, I dealt with a field in West Texas that produced 2/3 of the gas that was being produced was CO2. And you can't burn CO2. So you had to extract the gas, separate out the CO2, keep the methane that we burn in our houses, and then get rid of it. And by getting rid of that CO2, it required an investment. So we partnered with another company, and we had a wonderful model that would have never had been changed, and we wouldn't have had this tremendous play, in my opinion, unless gas prices would have fell like they did. So starting in 2008, at Sandridge, we decided to make a change in the company. We moved from a natural gas company to where we started buying oil in the Permian Basin. And the Permian Basin at that time was an area that had cheap oil. No one was really looking to drill shallow conventional oil wells in West Texas in 2008, 2009. So we made an investment that was ended up being about $1.2 billion, and we just sold that investment. In fact, we'll close in the next month or so for $2.6 billion just now, but through 2010. So from 2010 to 2012, we had an investment of $1.2 billion that moved to a sale of $2.6 billion. At the same time, we moved down and bought the Gulf of Mexico properties, basically offsetting the production we're selling in the Permian. We produce about 25,000 barrels a day in the Gulf of Mexico. We sold 24,200 barrels a day in the Permian. And that is just because the Permian is the most expensive barrels of oil in the United States today. And the Gulf of Mexico is the least expensive barrels of oil. So we believe the Gulf of Mexico properties will be much like the Permian in a few years, that they'll be worth much more than we paid for them last year. But all that pales in comparison to what we do in the Mississippian. So our company has basically has transformed itself into a Mississippian oil company, and Alva, Oklahoma, is the hub of the Mississippian. So it's not Enid or Winoka or other places. It's Alva, Oklahoma is the place that money comes if you're going to come and invest in the Mississippian and where you work out of. And that's something you guys can be proud of, is that this city has embraced our company and has embraced the industry, and you're benefiting with the growth from that. So let's see. So here's just a map of where the Mississippian lies that Sandridge is interested in. There are other companies that drill over on the east side of this, but for the most part, this is about 20 million acres of land that's across western Kansas and northern Oklahoma. With Alva being in here, you can see the Sandridge wells that we drilled are in red. The green are old vertical wells, and then I have other maps in our corporate presentation that shows our peers. There's been about 1,400 horizontal Mississippian wells drilled since 2007, most of them starting in 2009 and beyond. We started drilling in late 2009, had our first wells come on in 2010. And today, Sandridge has over 45% of all wells horizontally drilled in the Mississippian. We've drilled over 600 wells. We have 32 rigs that are working in the play today. That should move up to 41 rigs by the end of 2013. That allows us to drill 580 wells in 2013, and then we'll go up to a steady state drilling that have grown from 0 in 2010 to the 32 rigs today, up to 41 rigs at the end of this year. And that allows us to directly employ about 2,500 people and every day that just work on Sandridge rigs. The employment around that, the add-on to that employment, is closer to 11,000 workers a day that just work for Sandridge on Sandridge wells. So that is the kind of employment that's being that is focused in and around Woods County, Oklahoma. And you can see we don't have a map here showing where the rigs are working, but out of the 32 rigs we have currently working, I think 23 of those are working in Oklahoma and 9 are working in Kansas. And the furthest north, we have a field office in Garden City, but our largest office is here in Alva. We do have the largest acreage position between us and our partners. We brought in $1.5 billion of capital from overseas to help spend money in the Mississippian. We have a Korean partner called H&M Partners, and we have the National Oil Company of Spain, Repsol, is also our partner in the Mississippian. So that money is coming here and helping us to drill. We are looking for one last partner to drill with us in Kansas, not in the Oklahoma side. We have we've sold all we want to in Oklahoma, but we still have over 1 million acres in Kansas that we're looking to have one more partner with. We have 32 rigs, as I've mentioned. One of the things that we talk about is that whenever we talk about the Mississippian, we're not talking about one particular county or one particular township or one section. We're talking about 200 miles that we've drilled wells from basically Perry to Garden City, and we can continually have success across the whole play. Now, some areas have worked better than others, but you can say that about every county we're in, not in one particular place. And all the wells we're drilling today are quite economic at today's prices. So I mentioned we have over 600 wells drilled, 44% of all the wells drilled in the play. There's a couple of places that we are just the leaders in the Mississippian. One is on days from spud to bringing on a well. So every time we spud a well or start the first day, 39 days later that well is producing oil and gas. Another one is that we have the most rigs running by a factor of nearly 4 times, and we are the least expensive driller. So every time we drill a well, it costs us just over $3 million to drill that well. An average of our peers is over $4 million per well. So just on the wells that Sandridge will drill this year, we'll save $580 million or over that compared to the peers in the industry. And that's just because of focus, that we have great people doing the same thing over and over again in an efficient way. And it's just allowed us to have, any time that you have tremendous focus on one particular thing, you can be better at it than others. And that's what we pride ourselves on, being the best driller in the Mississippian. We couldn't make that claim if we were drilling in Pennsylvania or if we were trying to drill in the Eagle Ford in Texas, but we are the best driller in the Mississippian. We have 107 disposal wells, as I mentioned, and I think the 384 miles of power line is now increased over 500 miles of electrical systems in place. Here's what I've talked about in growth. We started in 2010 with our first production, and from a standing start, we've grown that by 18 times from the third quarter of 2010 to the third quarter of 2012 to over 30,000 barrels of oil equivalent a day. And that is a tremendous effort by a company that's fairly small in the realm of all the different companies who participate and drill in these types of wells, and in owning at the same time. We had two very big assets, one in the Permian and one in the Mississippian. I think that's a testament to the management group that we've raised over $6 billion, in fact over $6.5 billion in the last 2 years to fund both of these projects. And today we are in the very best financial condition that the company's ever been in. We have $2.8 billion of liquidity. Pro forma, the Permian sale, our debt to EBITDA ratio or debt to earnings is only 1.6 times. So in a short amount of time, Sandridge is only 6 years old, we've grown the company to where we have over 2,000 employees, and that we have earnings or EBITDA over $1 billion, and we have nearly $3 billion of liquidity. And that's all around this play that we talk about in the Mississippian. So our corporate objectives are to generate high rates of return by focusing on the Mississippian, which again is centered right here where we sit in Alva, Oklahoma. So with that, I would love to open up for some questions.
I know you guys aren't bashful. I'm not saying anything else.
Tom?
Yes.
One of the things that in our processing and planning some things for the future and strategic development in Alva, everybody asks, how long is this going to last? How we're booming, and is this something that's 2, 3, 4 years? Is this something that's 10 years? And as far as the plan we're working on is going to have a major impact as to how long this will go.
A couple of years ago, I couldn't have answered that very well. Today, there's now been 1,400 wells that have been drilled across the play. We have a very good idea of how good the economics are of the Mississippian. In fact, if you were to look at our corporate presentation, we put a slide up that shows the comparison between a well drilled in the Bakken in North Dakota and a Mississippian well, and our rates of return are actually higher. And if we have higher natural gas prices in the future, which I believe we will, it would even be better than currently we are over the Bakken. And the Bakken is always thought of in North Dakota as the place to drill for oil in the United States. Well, you can find more oil, but you spend more money. So if an average Bakken well costs $9.2 million, our Mississippian wells are only costing $3 million, we can have a higher rate of return. So whenever I think of the Mississippian, I look at it and say, if a company can get their costs down, and if a company can have the disposal systems that we have in place, then you should be able to have a higher rate of return in the Mississippian than any other play. What our peers need to do is to make that commitment to spend the extra money in disposal and to have the commitment to drive down their costs. But as far as Sandridge goes, there's no doubt that we'll be here for many years. We have about 11,000 locations to drill, and next year we'll peak at 675 wells per year. And we're seeing tremendous interest from around the world to want to develop the Mississippian. So my belief is it'll be here for many years to come. The only hindrance to that is really oil prices or natural gas prices, but it's really driven by oil. At today, about 80% of our revenues per well come out of oil and not natural gas. I think natural gas is just a free upside for us. And oil prices will always dictate as to how much you can drill. What we've done is move ahead and like a farmer would his wheat, we've sold all of our oil for this year at $96.25. So we know what our economics are going to be for 2013, and we've gone ahead in 2014 and 15 and also sold a large portion of our oil to lock in those economics that we have today, where we can make the high rate of return. I can't speak for other companies, but my belief is that the Mississippian over other plays will be seen as an attractive investment. Yes?
Right now, we're not seeing a whole lot of increase in our school system. Will we see more students coming in for the 2013-14?
I think that the communities will probably need to brace for more housing. I think there's a shortage of a few things. We're starting to get places for people to stay with hotel rooms, but there continues to be shortages of housing, and I think what we're seeing is people are kind of coming in, working, and leaving, and not as much, not as available to have places to stay. So I think restaurants and houses and other ways to get people to sink their roots into a community would be helpful to have that increase in population that you're talking about.
Yes. You spoke of 9 additional rigs, is that correct?
Yes, this year.
This year. Are those all going to be right in Woods County?
No. That's across the place. So we have the statistics around what we have is that whenever we drill a well, there's about 69 jobs per rig that's running, and the 41 rigs that we'll have running will be across Grant, Alfalfa, Woods, and then up into Harper, Barber, some in Sumner, and all the way up to Finney County, Kansas. But the majority of those across the 3 counties that we drill the most in are Woods, Alfalfa, and Grant in Oklahoma.
How many more wells do you anticipate in Woods, Alfalfa, and Grant?
That's a good question. Our acreage position in Woods County isn't as strong as some of the other counties that we have acreage in, but each section is going to hold 4 wells per section. That's what we're projecting today. In fact, we have many sections that already have the 4 wells drilled in them. So it may be an easier way for you to look at it would be I'll get on a corporate presentation online and just see where the yellow is for us and see how much of that is in Woods County. I don't know off the top of my head. Alfalfa is probably an area that we have the most acreage in Alfalfa, Grant, and then probably Woods is the 3rd most amount of acreage we have. Keeping in mind that Chesapeake has a very large presence in Woods County because this was where they were at before we started buying acreage in the Mississippian.
How much does a drought affect your jobs?
Some. Finding fresh water is always difficult. I deal more with it in Kansas than in Oklahoma, but we don't use a tremendous amount of fresh water to frack a well with. It sounds like a lot when you say that we're going to use 40,000 barrels per well, but one of the things I talked to the Kansas farmers about that are worried about their fresh water is that every time we drill a well in Kansas, we use about the same amount of water to complete that well as it takes to irrigate an acre of corn. So I would say that so far we've irrigated 100 acres. But yes, it is difficult to find water handy. And I've been a landowner for a lot of years, and it's a benefit to be able to sell water if you have it to an oil company, just like it's a benefit to be able to have surface damages and lease roads and pipeline easements and all the other ways to enhance the farming activities that go on my land. So I look at us as being a provider of capital into the counties, not only from buying water, but from all the different ways that outside of just the oil and gas that we drill, from roads to everything else that a rig brings into the community. But we, like with farmers, we need rain, and I told Greg on the way up here, it's going to rain someday. I know it will.
Do you have to have fresh water, or can you use recycled?
We can use recycled water. It's more expensive to use recycled, but at one time we had about 20% of our fracs were with recycled water. You have to have a tank system, and then you also have to have a gathering system to get that into the tank. And we have, with our saltwater disposal system, we have a tremendous amount of water. In fact, we produce into our system today over 600,000 barrels a day. So we have the water capacity to frack with, but it actually costs slightly more to do that than to just get a fresh water from a local provider.
What about gray water?
Help me with what's a gray water?
Out of like a sewage lagoon.
Oh, I don't think I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that it would bother us. I know that produced water is not a problem at all. I'll check on that. Well, let me ask you that. Is there with gray water, is there sufficient capacity to be able to supply?
We'd have to check.
I was thinking
I think that we'd have to do some. We'd have to go through some DEQ to make sure.
And we'd probably have to check from, but
there may be some DEQ requirements that we have to look at.
I'm assuming that it's already been through the filtration system.
Right.
It'd be basically, it sure would be good water for us to use.
I mean, we water crops with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it won't hurt the formation. Is that we can actually put salt water back in the formation, and all we're trying to do is break apart rock. So it's not,
Yeah.
it's nothing that would hurt the formation for us to.
You're talking about irrigating corn. I mean, we water crops with it.
Yeah, so I think it's more of a question with how far you have to transport it. That's the expense. Is that if we need to have water fairly close to the areas of operation. So sure, we could use water on a rig that's working just outside of town, but we wouldn't be taking it to Alfalfa County.
Right.
Yes.
You talked about the salt waters available for use in fracking. Is that something that you're using more and more of, or is that feasible?
It is feasible. It's just more expensive. So whenever our company is really looks at cutting costs on everything. If you have what I know is we can effectively find the oil and gas in place, and so this brings up a different subject, but our company is one that believes that the formation we're in is not that hard to treat, and that you know how much oil and gas you're going to find, and the way to higher returns is to spend less money. Other companies, and both can be right, but other companies tend to believe that if you spend more money, you can find more oil, and then you make rate of return higher by finding more oil. Our formation is not an ultra tight formation, so it's not so hard to fracture treat and so hard to get out oil. What we've decided is that we need to drive down costs, and that we've been very, very good at that. So at the first of 2012, we were spending $3.6 million per well, and by the end of the third quarter, we were at $3.1 million per well, and we think we'll drive that down to $2.8 million per well. So to answer your question is yes, we could actually frack almost all of our wells with produced water. It just costs a little bit more.
How will the pipelines affect your company that are coming in here?
The natural gas pipelines, or I guess there's oil pipelines also. Both of those have a positive effect on us. So the oil pipeline, at least for us, is Plains All American, and that line is just makes us have less transportation costs. So we have less trucking that goes across our roads, and it costs us less to get oil to Cushing. So all of our oil ends up in Cushing, Oklahoma. But the closer terminal that we can have to a pipeline is just less expensive. It costs us about $5 per barrel to deliver oil to Cushing across all of the Mississippian. And then on pipelines, we've made a deal with Atlas Pipeline, and they gather all of our gas in at least in the Oklahoma counties of Woods, Alfalfa, and Grant. And we just signed another 5-year contract with them where they'll be picking up our gas, and so we have very good relationships with the pipeline companies.
My question's twofold, and if you will, several years ago when your company came to town and you made several promises to your company, and I'd like to know your reaction on whether we fulfilled, failed, or if there's things that we haven't done that we need to do yet. And then the second part of my question is, this group was put together to put a strategic plan together for Alva, Oklahoma. And my question is, how can Alva, Oklahoma ready itself strategically for the future of oil and gas or other industries that might be coming? You know, understand that there's a housing shortage, understand that we need more motels, hotels, and certainly restaurants. But how do you feel like that we can most effectively make the use of our limited tax dollars while we're in an expansion mode? How do you see it that we should look to the future?
First of all, I'll say you fulfilled everything that we've ever asked of you, and that the play itself is going to bring the capital into the area. Whether if another city were to do more expansion and have more opportunities for housing and I guess hotel, motel rooms and restaurants, that might make someone else want to do more work there. We've already committed to Alva as our home base for the Mississippian. The only other office we have is in Garden City, Kansas, and that really just deals with the more northern areas in Kansas we'll be drilling in. But our activity is going to be here, and it's based on that this is in the center of where we work. And so you're right, whenever you either won or lost, whenever you got us, but once we're here, we're going to stay. We don't look to be making another office anywhere else. And as far as other companies, I think once you have one company here, you tend to attract others. I think that's why the service companies want to be in this area. And I think that you were successful in being situated, where you are in the Mississippian. And I personally like this location the best, because not only do I like the people here and have connections here, it's in the right. You have the right leadership in place to make it easy for us to work here. So the only thing that can help is, and it takes risk, is for people to be able to put capital into the city to enhance the amenities that are already here. Yes.
You talked some about how many jobs come with each rig while it's being in the drilling process. Once it's up and running and in maintenance mode, what does that job load cut down to, or how many does it take to keep the operations going?
Yeah, not very many to keep an operation going. That really then was relying on our people here, and just a pumper and mechanics and just a few people to keep a well after the rig is moved off. So it is the most intense portion of the life of a well is during that first month whenever you're out drilling the well.
Is there a life expectancy on the well once it's in play?
It'd be more than 50 years. And once you bring a well, an average well will last over 50 years. Now the first 5 years are where all the present value is. So whenever I look at a company that says that they might make 600,000 barrels a well, or one that makes 400,000 barrels a well, really what I want to look at is the rate of return that all is pushed up in the first 5 to 7 years.
Along that same line of his question, so if you're adding 600 wells a year, roughly?
Next year we'll drill 675. This year 580.
Okay. How many service guys will that require then for each year of 675 wells?
After the wells have been drilled?
Correct.
A pumper, and I'm not going to have the exact number on this, but if you think about just a pumper can handle usually 20 to 30 wells. So that's just kind of one position. And then there's always working over wells. You have pumps go down. If you have electrical submersible pump in a well, it takes mechanics. And so there are all the other jobs that come with just maintaining a well. There's probably a handful of people at all times that keep track of the 20 or 30 wells at a time. But it's not in the hundreds.
I have a question. Has most of the acquisition of the mineral acres already happened, say in Woods County, or is there still leasing going on, still acquisition occurring?
The question was, is there still acquisitions and leases going on in Woods County, or has it already happened? Most of Woods County and even Alfalfa and Grant has been leased, but those lease terms are usually 3 years, and they might have two-year options on that. And you have different companies that, for whatever reason, have chosen to slow down their activity. So there are always leases that are rolling over, and you have areas that aren't around near the system, our system, that we will continue to try to buy and add our system into. So we're very aggressive at looking at leasehold across Woods, Alfalfa, and Grant, and even up into Kansas, to maintain, to keep growing our inventory of wells we could drill.
When the gas prices go up to where you'd like for them to be, is the infrastructure already in place to begin sowing it out, or will there have to be more welling and drilling and different things go into place before it's able to get a return for you?
And so the question is the infrastructure in place as we drill more wells for natural gas? And it is. So the greatest thing about, or one of the greater things about the Mississippian play is you are already in the middle of an oil field, and so there are many oil fields. So if you went across from Medford to Winoka, you wouldn't have thought that there had been tremendous oil play in the last few decades. But actually there had been, that different areas have been drilled, and underneath the ground there was this natural gas infrastructure that was already in place. So Atlas Pipeline System bought that infrastructure, and then it didn't cost them they bought it very cheaply over the years, and it didn't cost them or us very much to expand that system then. So if you look at that as comparatively, compared to maybe the Haynesville play in Louisiana, where all of the rigs that were drilling in Louisiana in a new area that had never been drilled before, they had to come in and lay new pipelines to that. And in our case, the system was already up and running, and now we do make expansions to that, but it's fairly easy to do. So very few wells do we have to move more than just a mile or two to add pipelines to it. It's western Kansas and northern Oklahoma are very good places to drill wells. It's easy to drill.
I have a question. How far west does this play? We're talking about Woods and Alfalfa and Grant counties. What about Harper, or is Harper not even gotten there yet?
Harper County, Oklahoma. Yeah, as you get into Harper County, you just move to a different formation. So it might not be everybody's geological idea, but our geological idea is that we want let's see if I can explain this. You have what's called the Pennsylvania nonconformity. So the Pennsylvanian sits above the Mississippian, and that's got a shell that's very, very hard. And the Mississippian, over millions and millions of years, has eroded into that. And so as you move away or move to the west and to the south, the zone that's eroding into the Pennsylvanian becomes the Chester, which sits above the Mississippian. And so for us in a geological setting, we want the Mississippian to be the top zone, and that in Harper County becomes Chester. Now, you might say that Harper County can still have this same play in the Chester instead of the Mississippian. That's not been tested yet. We've drilled some wells, but we haven't really tested those yet, and that might end up going over there. But in the Mississippian play for Sandridge, Harper County is not really in the geological province for us. Yes.
More of a input from the business side. We had county commissioners here talking once about production taxes, and I know that the oil industry has large lobbyists, not only in federal but at state level, I'm sure too. And we couldn't ever really get clear answers on the oil production taxes being of companies getting almost a waiver for up to 48 months. How much of that comes into play with you guys as far as if some of those, I'll call it a credit, starts to disappear, how much of that comes into play on the drilling side?
No, it wouldn't matter to us one way or the other. So if your economics are so small that you couldn't pay production taxes, we'd never drill the well. So I don't spend time lobbying. It's just a lot of other companies can handle that for us.
And they do. I have a question. You mentioned two of the challenges, or three of the challenges: housing, hotels, and restaurants, things that we're in need of in this part of the state, and particularly in this community. What about workforce? Is that something you're also concerned about as you continue to drill at Pumpers and others? Are you concerned in terms of workforce development and workforce? Do we have the people that you need if we're going to be able to grow, or we're going to be attracting more people to fill those roles? And are we providing the training and education? I mean, Dr. Cunningham's here from the college, President of the college, Dr. Harris from the Career Tech, Mr. Parker from the high school. So whether it's a college degree, Career Tech, the training that you need there, or the high school preparation, Any concerns there that we need to be thinking about in terms of workforce?
I always look that we have 750 men just right out there outside of town that we need to put to work. But no, the workforce has been good, and we can always do better. But the workforce to work in Oklahoma and in the oil field is a very attractive place compared to almost any place else in the U.S. So as people have moved away to go to work in, say, Pennsylvania, they want to come back. And so we've had no issues with getting good quality employees here. I think that there will continue to be a need for more workers as we drill more and more wells, obviously. But so far, we've been able to adequately put people to work. I do believe that the bigger issue is just how do you get people here if there's no place to live.
You know, as you travel around to areas where oil plays have happened in the past, and you find communities that are riddled with vacancies all over the place, are there things that we should be looking at strategically that will outlive the play itself in terms of industry developments? They talk some about education. Should we be trying to find ways to have something building and coming into play? We've got the rail project at Avard that Woods County and Alva has actively participated with. Are there things that you've seen or come across that should be emphasis for industry development outside of just the oil play itself?
I don't know of any. I think that's always good for a city to be diversified if you can be. I think, though, of Elk City that has really lived by boom and bust for the entire time that I've been in business, and have actually done pretty well by building out, being prepared for the next drilling phase that happens there. I believe that northern Oklahoma is going to be a place of continued energy expansion because of the ability that the formation is shallow, it costs less to drill in, and you can make high rates of return. So as long as you're in an area that has the higher rates of return, other plays should go down before this one. But there's no guarantee the prices will stay up. You remember, I'm the guy who said that gas prices would never go below 6, so don't take all that somewhat with a grain of salt. But I think the energy business is the best way to grow, the most attractive way for a city to grow, especially in Oklahoma, and I would embrace it. But as far as other industries, I don't really know.
Well, are there supporting industries to the industry you're in that it would be wise of our community to be recruiting those to try and develop here?
Well, they're all associated, I believe. I think you're doing a good job of, and maybe the competition is with just some of the surrounding cities, but I think you're doing a good job of having access to maybe some service companies. I don't know if I would guess not competing cities, but I know that a lot of service companies are officed in Woodward. Is that because they have an industrial park, or what is there that could be added here to have, because service companies are wanting to be closer to their activity if they can. So I do think that the service industry around the drilling industry would be helpful. I don't know what that entails. Yes?
At what price is it not attractive to continue to drill?
Well, once you put your system in place for saltwater disposal, we go down to, I think at $70 oil, we still make a 30% rate of return. So it gets to be where it's very difficult not to drill wells here. The bigger challenge is that you do have to put in upfront costs, and you have to make a long-term investment into the play through infrastructure with saltwater disposal. I think that's been the hindrance to the Mississippian so far.
My last question. And you're a frequent user of our airport, and a lot of other companies have been as well. Personal take on things that could be done there to make it better, if any?
Well, it's awesome for a city this size to have an airport that can land a jet is just fantastic. I mean, it's needed, and I think that if you look at one main reason that a company would want to come in and have this as a regional play or regional hub would be because the easy access in and out of the airport. So I think it's done very well. Yes.
So did I hear you say that the exemption on gross production tax doesn't matter? I mean, isn't really an important part of your overall business plan? Because for us, gross production has been such a wonderful shot in the arm for our schools and hopefully to help our infrastructure here, our roads and things like that. So is it true that you do have a 4 or 5 year exemption on gross production?
You're talking to almost the worst political guy in the world. I know we get an exemption. I don't know exactly what that is, but I can tell you it doesn't affect how we budget.
Okay, well that's interesting. Good.
I will say that's one of the things we've been talking about with capital is price indexing some of the incentives. And when oil gets to be a certain price, the incentives don't need to be as great. There's not been, as Mr. Ward talked about, the other companies have plenty of lobbies to take care of that for those in the industry that do want those incentives. But I will tell you, in terms of the man standing in front of you, in my 8 years in the legislature, I have never had a conversation with him or his company about anything related to the oil and gas business. I've had numerous conversations with him about public policies going to move the state forward, numerous conversations about corrections reform, about quality of life issues. Never once has Sandridge or Tom Ward come to the legislature and asked for anything related to oil and gas, which is incredibly unusual for that industry. But I think it speaks volumes for the company that we have in our community and the leadership that we have for that company.
It's very admirable.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a good way to end. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you again. We really appreciate you coming up. It was very enlightening for me, and I'm sure a lot of the rest of us in here. We really appreciate you taking the time and your investment in this community and the surrounding area. For the committee, we will be meeting next week. We're getting ready to really get ramped up on identifying the strategies and start putting the plan into place. So I think this is a good lead into that, kind of a good roadmap for what our community has to look forward to in the future. So at that, thank you guys for coming out. We'll see you again next week out at the Rec Park.